What's up guys? Today we are checking out this tiny little amp. It is the Hotone Heart Attack. It's part of their Nano Legacy series. And this particular model is based on the legendary Mesa Boogie Dual Rectifier. It's a compact, solid state 5-watt amp that sounds amazing. Let's check it out. Alright, so that was this tiny little guy in a full mix. You can hear it in context with all the other instruments. It sounds surprisingly decent. There was zero post-processing on the guitars. Only thing I did was just a simple high shelf and low shelf just to kind of cut out some of the crap that you don't need for a guitar chain. But very, very simple. That's pretty much what the amp sounds like. And the signal chain was this Diamond Monarch EX going straight into the little Hotone Heart Attack, and the cab was my Diamond US Custom 2x12 loaded with vintage 30s, and the mic was a Shure SM57. So, as I said, this tiny little amp is based on the legendary Mesa Boogie Dual Rectifier, an amp that I've had a love-hate relationship with for so many years now. All the bands I grew up with, they were all playing through that thing, and it sounded amazing, and I've contemplated buying one about 5 times now, and every time I try one, I'm just completely disappointed. It's just, I don't know why, it's just not the amp for me, but other people make it sound great. But anyway, this video is not about that, it's about this little Hotone Heart Attack. And yes, that is how you say the name. I actually looked it up, it's Hotone. I, for the longest time, thought it was Hotone. It's pronounced, or it's spelled like Hotone. Can't even say it right now. But it is Hotone. Anyway, so this, like I said, is a 5-watt solid state compact little practice amp, and I bought it for the purpose of being a practice amp. Whenever I got it about 1.5 years ago, I only had my 6505 Plus, and if you've ever played with one of those, you know how insanely loud they are. So I bought this little guy to plug into my Avatar cab just to jam through at night. It's very, very quiet, and it can get surprisingly loud. I said it's a 5-watt solid state amp, but it is insanely loud for what it is. And as you can see, I'll try to, I'll zoom out on this camera right here, but you can actually see that it's about the size of a standard guitar pedal. I don't know how well you can see that, but it is tiny. It's so small. Let me just zoom that back in there. So yeah, what we get, you get your gain, and then you have a full 3-band EQ, and then a volume and your power switch. On the back, you have an effects loop, you have an aux in, and a line out / headphone out, so you can pump your music into it and then listen to the amp on headphones. It's solid state, so you don't have to have a cab plugged in if you just want to jam on headphones at night. It works from 4 to 16 ohms, which is really handy. It's just one plug on the back, and then there's the power adapter that comes with it, and it just plugs into the power port on the back. So now let's just go ahead and check out some sounds for this thing. I have the tone dialed in a little gainier than I would normally have. I usually wouldn't use quite this much gain, but I found that like a real Recto, this amp sounds better with a slightly mid-scoop setting and then a little more gain than you're probably comfortable with. It sounds a little dry and kind of flubby, little boxy and flubby without enough gain. I really like the wet sound that it has. So. Now, I keep saying rectifier, and to my ears, it sounds pretty close to what a Recto sounds like. I'm not going to say it sounds exactly like a $2,000 boutique American-made amp. It's not the real deal, but it's kind of that same flavor of tone. I've looked inside to see how they get this thing to sound so good, and it looks like they're using clipping diodes like what you find in a lot of distortion pedals. And to me, the gain sounds like a really good pedal distortion. It doesn't sound and feel like an amp at all. But if you listen to the low end, it kind of blooms and flubs out like a rectifier. Here, just take a listen. If I really kind of turn up the low end a little bit, you can hear how much the low end kind of blooms and just like boo, like a real Recto does. Hear what I'm talking about? That is like the rectifier sound to me, is that huge, just massive wall of low end that just like, it's like a mountain that just like or like a tidal wave, it just like flows over you with low end. Now, it's not quite like the tube amp kind of low end that blooms. It definitely sounds kind of like a pedal, not farting out, because it does get farty when you really crank up the low end. But it seems like a pedal that's simulating that kind of loose low end that the rectifier is known for. For me personally, I actually prefer a very tight sound like the 6505 Plus and the Diamond. The Jet City's a little looser, which should be closer to like a rectifier. So I definitely prefer the tighter side of things. This little guy makes me want to play like slower, heavier, rock kind of stuff, and not so much like the fast, tight metal. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try some different settings on this guy. Right now I have it dialed into what I think sounds best. It's the same settings I used on the recording. This amp is very sensitive to EQ settings, and it doesn't work quite in the traditional way. The treble is kind of like a dual presence and treble pot. You can kind of hear like it gets harsher and fizzier at the same time that the treble's going up. The lows, they add a lot at the beginning stages and then at like the very end, but it doesn't do a whole lot in between. The mid-range is very, very powerful, and I found that actually the higher that the mid-range goes, it sounds, to my ears, it sounds closer to what I think of like the earlier two-channel rectifiers sound like. And then if you have it scooped a little more, like what I have it now, it sounds more like the modern multi-watts. And then the Rev G? Was that the 3-channel before the multi-watt? But the original 3-channel Recto. So let's just go over here, and I'm just going to put everything at 5. And I'm gonna leave the gain where it's at. Sounds a little boxy to me. I like that real bitey, snarly top end that like kind of sounds like the tone is on fire a little bit. I really like that. To me, that's what a rectifier sounds like. So let's just play with the bass a little bit. You can hear how quickly the low end just like jumps straight into the signal, and then it doesn't do a whole lot past like 3 on the dial, and then it really jumps in again once you get to about 8 or so. Here's the mid-range. That spot right there, I'll show you guys in a second, but if you have the mid-range like right there and you dial up the treble and the bass, to me that's what the earlier 2-channel rectifiers sound like. Again, this is just what this little guy is trying to sound like. Obviously it's not the real deal, but you know what? That's what they were going for. And let's check out the treble a little bit. This is gonna get real piercing here for a second. Oh, that's nasty. All right, let's dial that back a little bit. Oh, yeah, that's too much right there. I like to have the treble up a little bit, but not where it's like piercing your ears. And it's a little too much low end. And like right here is like the sweet spot for the mids if you want the more classic sound. Yeah, I still think that at least for me, I think these are the best settings I've found for this little guy. Like I said, the low end sounds like a pedal trying to emulate that loose, blooming low end. The high end, I find a little hard to get in the sweet spot. It's either too, kind of too dark or too harsh. It's really hard to find that sweet spot on it. Mid-range is very, very powerful. You can either get it to sound pretty scooped, like the more modern rectifiers, or you can get like that mid-forward sound of the earlier 2-channel ones. Very, very powerful, but it tends to start to sound very boxy if you're not careful with it. As far as gain, this amp is gain and gain only. There is no clean channel to be found. I'll show you guys. This is with the gain all the way down. So you can hear it just kind of turns into a muddy mess there. You just lose all your high end. That's better. If I try to roll off the guitar volume a little bit. Switch to the neck pickup. Yeah, there's no clean on this at all. Sorry, if that's what you're looking for, this is not the practice amp for you. This is gain and gain only. And it has a lot of it. Let's crank it all the way up. That note will go on for days. This thing has so much gain built into it. Like, it's ridiculous. That sound right there, that is why I prefer to have the gain up a little more. It sounds a little odd to me with the gain lower down. Like I don't know if you can hear that in the palm mutes. It sounds like this thing's almost missing a bright cap, and so it shouldn't have that much low end with the gain this far down. Typically on a lot of tube amps, you see that as you turn the gain up, the sound thickens up because there's a bright cap on there. To me, it sounds like this amp doesn't really have one of those. It sounds like there's the same amount of low end no matter where you go on the sweep. And I think that's why it sounds a little weird when the gain is. It sounds a little weird when the gain's that dry and the low end's still kind of flubbing out. So that's why I prefer to have the gain up. Alright, so let's talk volume on this thing. If you haven't noticed, I've had the volume all the way up on this guy right now. I am running through the impulse response through my computer, so I'm listening on my studio monitors right now. But this thing can get surprisingly loud for how small it is. I take this amp as a backup amp to gigs, actually, believe it or not, and it's so funny watching me pull this thing out of my case, and people laugh, they look at it like, haha, what is that little thing? And then I plug it into like a 4x12 and crank it all the way up, and they're just blown away with the sound that comes out of the speaker cab from this tiny pedal-sized little amp. But in terms of volume, it's not loud enough to gig. I would definitely not gig with this unless you are miking up your cab. When my band played out, we always mic'd up our cabs anyway. Even with these 100+ watt tube amps over here, I still mic up the cabs. The 57 on the cab is part of my sound that I like, so I keep my volumes low and have the guitar tone come out of the PA anyway. So it's not a huge deal for me, but this thing's probably not going to keep up with most drummers. If you have a more relaxed show, which for whatever reason you need a really high gain sound for a more relaxed drummer, you could probably get away with it. I'd say in terms of volume, this guy on max is about a I'd say everything relative to a 5150 because everybody knows that amp, and I know that amp like the back of my hand. I'd say volume-wise, it's about a 5150 on like 1.5-ish. So like decent volume, but you're not gonna gig with it solely off the power of this thing. Now, that said, there is an optional extension cab that you can get. It's this tiny little, it's this cute little baby speaker that looks like a little mini 4x12 that this thing sits on top of. I haven't checked the price on it, but I think it's like 70, no, not 70. I'll have to look up the price. I'll put it in the video here. But I think it's only like a 3-inch speaker, and from what I've heard, it does not sound very good. This guy really only sounds good through a proper cab with 12-inch speakers. Now, I just touched on price, and this little guy, it's a little more expensive than I would expect. The Heart Attack of all of them is the most expensive for whatever reason. I think it's a good $20 more than the next model. Some of the other Nano series amps, they are around $100-ish. Some are like $120. This guy, for whatever reason, is about $140. Not quite sure why, but for whatever reason, this particular model is the most expensive. Alright, so who is this amp for? Really anybody, I guess. It's more of just like a fun little practice amp, kind of a novelty thing. I don't want to call it a toy because it sounds really incredible for what it is. Like I said, it sounds like a really good pedal distortion, but it's definitely not going to replace any of your amps, I don't think. If it was louder and maybe had like a preamp tube in it, then it might be taken as like a more serious option for smaller gigs. But as it is, it's a small little practice amp that's just kind of fun. Like I said, you don't really expect the amount of volume and gain and just like overall good sound to come out of something in such a small package. But I say volume sparingly because, like I said, it's not loud enough to gig with, but it does have some decent volume. If I turn this thing all the way up, it would definitely annoy my parents. You can hear it throughout the house. So it's got some volume, just not enough to keep up with like a real heavy-hitting drummer. Now let's talk in terms of build quality for a second here. It seems okay enough. It seems like I keep saying a pedal because it seems built just like a pedal. It's like that folded metal, you know, I'm not quite sure what type of metal they use to make most pedals out of, but that's what it feels like. It's decently heavy for what it is. It's got some good weight to it. It's heavier than you'd expect it to be. It's got, you know, the knobs feel a little cheap. They're pretty, you know, they're real plasticky. They don't feel like amazing to turn. I don't know. Not that you really care about this on a tiny little $140 little practice amp. But you know what? Build quality is pretty good for what it is. You know, it's not some boutique thing, but it's nice. It's decent. You know, I have no complaints about the build quality. It's been totally reliable for me. I don't use it often, but it's been plenty reliable for me when I have used it. I can always count on it. If, God forbid, something happens to one of my amps when I'm at a show, I can just whip this thing out of my case and plug it in and be good to go. Alright, well that's pretty much all I can say about this little guy. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you guys thought about this. And then check out my channel for all of the other videos that I have on here. I really want to hear what you guys think about this, and let me know what you'd like to see in the future. And please hit that like and subscribe button so you can keep updated on everything else I put out. Since it's summertime, I should be able to upload a lot more frequently now. And I'm really looking forward to getting some more content out there. So if you guys would do that, that'd be great. And like I said, leave a comment below. I want to hear from you guys. And thanks for watching. Please make sure to hit that... I dropped my pig! Drop my pig!